Hello and welcome back, fellow PowerShell engineers. We are now moving on to Unit 3, Automation. And aside from the foundational things that make PowerShell so great, like object-centeredness, the pipeline, ubiquity on all Windows systems, automation is really what enables PowerShell to deliver the value to businesses, to any organization. Making automation happen is how you can get tasks to run repeatedly and correctly every time, saving you, your team, your organization hours of labor. And while having PowerShell on your resume may be impressive, explaining how you leveraged it to save time and money could take you across the finish line in getting a job, promotion, or just making your job easier. And I'm talking about this from my experience as a systems engineer and as someone who has made hiring decisions. As a systems engineer in the banking sector, I was able to automate numerous processes. We were fortunate enough to have a continuous improvement team that tracked these processes, but once the processes, or one process had finance workers logging in early every day to manually move and process files, which was just absolutely crazy. Once this was automated, they were able to come in at a normal time and just confirm that the files had been processed. So can you imagine having a position where you had to come in early with something that could have been automated with PowerShell? I mean, it's ridiculous. Our continuous improvement department at the credit union I worked at estimated that this one project alone, this one automation project, saved 150 hours in a year for those workers. And if we estimate that they were making just $20 an hour, this represents an annual savings of $3,000 on top of the assurance that the files would be processed correctly every time, right? Because we took a process that was a human-driven process and just said, hey, this is how it works, verified that it worked, and the code just ran it every time. It was really an incredible experience. So if you figure that we had maybe 20 hours of engineering time at approximately $40, $50 an hour, the labor cost of that was only about $800 to $1,000 one time to get the automation up and running. And that's just one thing. We actually, on that team, I worked to automate tons of other things, and I still do that now as a director, though in a different role a little bit. But imagine how many things like this in an organization you have that PowerShell could enable these savings on through automation. So in this unit, we're going to explore how to automate the execution of PowerShell code and scripts. And there are a few core automation concepts we're going to cover: scheduled tasks, scheduled jobs. We're going to build graphical interfaces with Windows Forms, and we're going to use AI, artificial intelligence, specifically ChatGPT, to generate code. And these things are going to be the foundation of the whole rest of the course, and really they are the foundational thinking I think you should approach PowerShell with, because just knowing how to do random things in PowerShell isn't the value. The value is automating things and leveraging other technologies to save time, make stuff run correctly and more efficiently every time. So, no, that was a long intro for a unit, but had to be said. Very, very important. So let's go ahead and delve into it. We'll see you guys in the next lesson. Hello and welcome back, PowerShell engineers. I wanted to go over how to create a scheduled task using PowerShell that automates the execution of a PowerShell script at 3 p.m. on a daily basis. And I have the script already here. We'll give it a run that actually builds it. And this code is obviously in the lesson and in the GitHub, but this is the basic layout of creating a scheduled task. And this would be in the task scheduler that's on the Windows system. Now, we start off by building a trigger. So there are commandlets already built into PowerShell for this. And you have to create a new scheduled task trigger. We're going to set this at 3 p.m. daily. And that will just set it to run at 3 p.m. daily. Then the action is to actually load PowerShell with the argument, hey, we're loading this specific script. Now, this script is one that we write later that's already written, so it'll be executed. It could be any script you want, though. It could be your script that is run, your first PowerShell script, but there's really no other way to see that there, right? So I had to pick a script, so I picked this one. So we want to run this script at 3 p.m. daily. You create the new settings set, which is required when you go ahead and register the scheduled task with the action, with the trigger. You give the task a name, you give it a description, and then put your settings in there. So let's go ahead and save that. This may not actually work here because we are not running this as administrator, but let's give it a shot. Nope, it already worked. So the task name is ready. So let's go ahead and open the task scheduler. And I have this focused in on the ISE window, so you probably didn't see that, but let's go ahead and look at our task schedule library. And there we see it right there. Test the SpaceX connection. The trigger is 3 p.m. every day, and the action is to run this file. So this is the really basic building block, and obviously you could go into task scheduler and build this way too, but that's how you would build the scheduled task. And that's about it for this lesson. So we just went ahead and we built a scheduled task with PowerShell. You wouldn't necessarily need to automate this or do this with PowerShell, but I mean, I think it's in terms of managing the task, it's important to see how they're constructed in PowerShell. So, all right, guys, let's go ahead and move on to the next lesson. Hello and welcome back, fellow PowerShell engineers. Now we're going to look at how we can view our scheduled tasks. And this is pretty straightforward. We hop into our PowerShell terminal and we can do get scheduled task. And we get all of our scheduled tasks. So let's see if we scroll up here. There's our test SpaceX task. And we'll see that right there, the one that we had made before. So this is important too, so you can see their state, and the task name, and the path. So pretty cool. Important to know what's going on here, being able to see these and manage these. You can actually get them by the name. If we do a get scheduled task, we can search by the task name. Boom, and we find that it's in a ready state. So it's really that simple to search for it. And you can actually turn around and pipe that into the get scheduled task info. And we can get our last runtime, our next runtime, the last task result. We can look up what those codes mean, number of missed runs. So this is how you could really drill down if you were maybe going to build an auditing on your automation, which is probably not a horrible idea, to make sure that stuff is run or have some other types of alerts in there. So that's about it for this lesson. Let's go ahead and move on to the next one. Hello and welcome back, fellow PowerShell engineers. Let's go ahead and take a look at how we can remove a scheduled task. And the way you would do that is using the unregister, scheduled tasks, scheduled job. We'll get to scheduled jobs later. And we would do that, and we look at our task name. And our task name was test SpaceX. And we can go ahead and just bypass any kind of confirmation by doing confirm false. We do that. Boom, we see that it executed successfully. And if we go to try to find it again, it can't find it because we've removed it. So be careful when doing this, especially if you were using wildcards, for instance, to make sure that you're removing the correct tasks. And, you know, in general, you never know how important something is when you're adding or removing it. So let's just always remember to be careful when we're doing this stuff. But that said, let's go ahead and move on to the next lesson. Hello and welcome back, fellow PowerShell engineers. Now we are going to switch gears and take a look at scheduled jobs. They are a lot like scheduled tasks, but they are actually a little bit better for a lot of reasons. They kind of remind me of a cron job, if you're familiar with that in Linux. But yeah, there's no graphical interface to manage them. But a scheduled job is similar, but it allows you to run a script or command in scheduled intervals, and it provides more advanced options, such as the ability to run the job even if the computer is in a different state. So, like if it's asleep or hibernating. So, what I have here is a script that will create a scheduled job to run that same test SpaceX script. And it's kind of similar, but it's a little bit more straightforward. There's a trigger that we set, and there's a script block, right? So that's definitely a little bit different. And then you just register the scheduled job. So let's go ahead and give this a run and see how it goes. So again, you need to run this as an administrator. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and open our PowerShell window, and we will change into the 3 directory. Excuse me. Let's change into the 03 directory. And we will run the create scheduled job script. And we see that it has created the job. So that will now run that at the 3 p.m. interval daily. And the way we can view those jobs is just by doing get scheduled job. And again, we just see that the exact same table we just received, but you wouldn't obviously already see that, every time if you want to go check on what jobs you have going, which ones are floating out there, and what's going on with that. And again, too, you can do the filtering. So we can get scheduled job and the name. You can do, well, there's only one, so we should be able to do a wildcard. Of course, you get that job. So that is how you create a scheduled job. It's actually pretty straightforward. You can review the detailed information about it too, though, by doing get scheduled job by name and get job trigger, I believe. All right, we might need to type the whole thing. Oh no, yeah, that is still just return the same. All right. Yep. So that's actually just the same thing by filtering by the triggers. Well, actually, really, you could filter by specific triggers to try to filter that down, which does remind me of this point that we can pipe this and do a select and just get specific values back. So if we just want to name and state, out of there, we can just get the name and state back, and that's a way to kind of review it. Just, hey, what jobs are out there and what's going on with them, right? So the final thing would be that I'm going to lump this all into one video because it really is just a handful of commands, is that we can unregister a job. So we can go ahead and take that job away. And it's unregistered. So if we go back to the get scheduled job, just that by itself, we find that we have no scheduled jobs on the system. So that is about it for scheduled jobs. I know it actually is a really, really critical piece of the automation that we're going to cover throughout this course, but it's just a handful of commands, really. If you've got the code down, and again, since you're a member of PowerShellEngineer.com, you've got the code, and that's about it. So we'll go ahead and see you guys in the next lesson. Hello and welcome back, fellow PowerShell engineers. We are now going to go over how to build graphical user interfaces with our PowerShell scripts using Windows Forms. And this is a particularly favorite subject of mine and one that's not often included in the discussion of automation. Now, over the years, I have made numerous graphical user interfaces or GUIs with PowerShell using Windows Forms. And my disk cleaning script that I keep bringing up, which is available for free on my GitHub, actually uses Windows Forms to present a graphical interface to make use of the script easier. So let's take a look at what that actually looks like. And I actually had it open earlier. Reopen PowerShell. Get child item. I don't remember exactly. 03. All right, and disk cleaning script. So that's how you would run a script in the current directory. That's what that / means. If you didn't know, so you'll have to have that. Note 2, again, we're running as administrator. So let's go ahead and give this a run. And I think we'll do this twice. And it takes a second because it does a little scan of the file system. And then it comes up somewhat quickly. And as we can see, this is actually a PowerShell script that has a graphical user interface that was built with Windows Forms. Everything you see here is actually just PowerShell, which is pretty sweet. And that's why I wanted to make a simple tool. This is how we can build these kinds of tools actually into things that people can use. So it'll be a little bit more portable, and we'll get into making that a little even more portable here in a second. But again, this is the GitHub for that script. Disk cleaner, my GitHub here, and you'll see it's actually just PowerShell, which is crazy. It does a few other things. There's some other custom things going on here that I explain in the comments. It is actually a custom module that I built. So you'll see it's importing the module right there. And there's some other custom functions here. And we go down, we'll see where we build the Windows Forms UI elements. So this is the form that we built. And that would be this whole thing right here. It defines the width and the height. Or yes, the width and the height. The form title text, which I defined above. And the reason I did that separately is because I put this into so many different languages. I had these variables that I would change all the way up here. So if we go back down, we see that we start defining the different labels and their text. And that text is defined above too, again, to make it easier to change the language when I was putting this in different languages. And our combo box and lots of other elements here. So how did I lay all this out though? I mean, this is a lot of work. The sizing of these elements and position of these elements is defined in each one. So obviously getting this to look as clean as it does is a little tricky. You know, if you were just doing this just in PowerShell ISC, it's certainly doable, but you would spend a lot of time doing it. So I actually used a tool called poshgui.com, and it is $7.99 a month to use. And basically it can make Windows Forms. It's a graphical editor to make graphical interfaces for PowerShell Windows Forms. So I'd already started one, but I'll just show you this again. If we do plus here, we're on My Projects, plus WinForm. Call it Unit 3.1. Make it just be a private form. And now we can start building out an app in Windows Forms. So the first thing we would want to do if we were just making a small form is make a label. That's just a simple text element. It can have events on it, but it doesn't necessarily need to. So let's just make a small little form. We won't actually add any logic to it, but we'll just call it first name label. So that's just the name of the label. This will just be the label that we have. This is the name of the variable or the object in that label. But this is the actual text value down here under appearance. So let's go ahead and put first name in that. And there we go. We have a first name. And now to collect input from a user, we use a variety of elements, but the standard one would be the text box. And I like Posh GUI because it has these guides too. If you see that there popping up, helps a little bit. And I'll say too, as a note, when you're building these, always build them a little bit bigger than what you think they're going to be. Give some spacing, because it does ultimately render a little bit differently than the way it renders in the web browser. So that looks about good there. Of course, we can add all sorts of elements here. Let's go ahead and add a combo box. And I don't really need to do anything special with that. We can just see what that looks like. And we could add a checkbox. There's a whole list view you can add. One of my favorites actually is the data grid. Where is that? There it is. And that's really fancy for inputting information into. It's nice and clean. I like the way that looks. I've got some scripts in the works that I'm going to be using that data grid with. And of course, one of our biggest ones, I'm not going to go over all these, I think you get the idea, is a button. So let's give a little feedback label down here. Let's put it up here. We'll just build a little quick script, not do anything crazy. We'll just even leave that as label 1. Bump this up to maybe 50. And we'll say, what is your name? Make that a little smaller. And we'll actually change the button text here. We'll just name it enter name. Or how about submit name? And let's name this text box just first name text box. All right, that looks good. Now, what I like to do is I don't really like entering a whole lot of code. I like to pull this out once my UI is built the way I want it. Got label 1, that's fine. First name text box and submit name. And actually, what we'll want to do with this, and the website's a little wonky like that. It was missing our events tab here. We'll want to go add a click event on that. And you could actually add any of these events on any of these. It's pretty sweet. And start getting real crazy, make some complex stuff. But for the purpose of this course, I think, we're going to be making some simple stuff. Eventually, I am going to do a deep dive into all of these things, or most of these things, to make some really complicated apps. I think that would be a cool idea for a course. But through the context of this course, everything we touch, we're going to hit either scheduled jobs, scheduled tasks, or making a GUI for something. So anyway, that's just an aside. Let's go ahead and look at the output. And now we have all of our code here. Fantastic. It's even got a name. Some comments up there. And we're just going to copy all of it and go ahead and move that over to a new PowerShell ISE script. And well, I've already got a script ready to go there. that's already saved. And let's go ahead. And even inside of ISE, you can just give this a run. Let's go ahead and press play. There is our script. Pretty sweet. We got a combo box with nothing, a checkbox that doesn't do anything, a list view and a data grid that don't do anything. But we do have a click event, right? So let's just go interact with the form a little bit. We'll show you how to do this click event. So that label 1 is what we're going to want to change. And what we're going to want to change specifically is the text of it, where it says, what is your name? So we're going to say that we want to set that. Remember, we can just reset variables however we want, or properties of variables, or properties of objects. And we want to set it to whatever the first name text box text is. And this even picks up that this is a Windows Forms and lets us Windows Form and lets us know what the options are for properties in PowerShell ISE. Built-in free program. Gotta love it. And actually, you know what? Let's just back that out just a smidge. Let's just construct a label there. I want to just capture that first. That. And we'll just do a hello first name. And we can do it inside of the quote. Looks like it's complaining about that. There we go. Let's go ahead and give that a run. Jim. Hello, Jim. Just that easy. We're capturing the value of a text box. The click event is generating that code there, and it's resetting the value of a text property of a label. So if you're following along, this is in the GitHub. Obviously, you can go check this simple script out. And this is the foundation of building Windows Forms. And this is where we generate all that value. You go from these basic principles like this to being able to make something complicated like this disk cleaning script, which really, now if we're looking at this again, what do we see here? There's a form, a combo box, a bunch of labels that we're setting text values to, just giving feedback, a button, and more labels. I mean, you know, this particular script from a graphical user interface point of view is just not that complicated. You know, just from this lesson alone, you have what you need to make the shell of this. And then later on in the course, making the custom functions, but you actually don't even need a custom function. You can run all of your logic to clean the disk right here in this one button click if you wanted to. So very, very powerful stuff. Very cool stuff. Go ahead and click stop. And something to note too real quick. When you do click stop, you know it's stopped. It's still there. So you want to close it. I've seen PowerShell ISE occasionally have issues with that kind of thing if you let it go too long. I'm not sure exactly what the issue is. So you can always just run these as we did earlier with PowerShell directly. So that is it for this lesson. A little bit of a longer lesson than what we're used to, but very important, powerful stuff. I actually presented this this concept at a conference just last year, and tons of people were like, wow, these scripts I have, I could take these scripts, plug them into Windows Forms, and give them to my help desk people, or even just build tools that I need as a sysadmin or systems engineer, and have them automated and do the same thing over and over again. So again, this is why this is in the automation chapter, because it is so powerful. All right, guys, we'll see you in the next lesson. Hello and welcome back, fellow PowerShell engineers. In this lesson, we are going to go over how to convert PowerShell scripts to exe files. And the way we're going to do that is with the PS2 exe module, which is a PowerShell module that allows you to convert a PowerShell script to an executable file. And creating an executable file of your script can increase its overall portability and overcome limitations of having to run a PowerShell script. Now, first you need to install the PS to exe module, and you can do that simply enough by using the install module inlet. And we just do the name parameter, and it is PS2exe. Now, I already have it installed, so just kind of breeze through that there. So we're good to go. Note that it likely is going to be an untrusted repository. So you're going to want to just click yes when I ask you that. It's like, oh, hey, it just gives you kind of a security warning. So to actually use it, we're going to use the invoke dash ps2exe. And notice that I'm already in my directory here for the cleaner script. And I'm going to do the source path of my disk cleaner script. So there'll be diskcleaner.ps1. And the target path of the exe, which will be diskcleaner.exe. So go ahead and give that a run. And it says that it's made it successfully. So let's go ahead and do a get child item, and to list the contents of our directory here, and we see the diskcleaner.exe. Now if we move over to this cleaner folder, we see diskcleaner.exe right here, Windows application now, not a script. So we can just run that as administrator. I get a warning to still run it. And we'll just do R for run. And that's a security feature. And now we see that we have it down here. And it's running as an exe file, not as a PowerShell script. And we'll see it even down here in the bar as an exe file. So it's constructed no problem where you need it to be. And it's just a great way to make your PowerShell scripts portable. And actually, too, I'm kind of lumping this in with the graphical user interface piece to it. But this will work with any script. It doesn't have to be a Windows form script, even though I'm lumping it in with this. You could have it run a PowerShell, any kind of PowerShell script if you just had some task you needed to use and you just wanted to run it as an exe. So another thing to think about too is the dependencies. So when you start making things more portable, you'll notice right here that my script has a custom module, right? And this isn't actually installed on my system. The module that's listed in here, the script module, the PSM1 file. So right now the script is just pointing to that as a path, but the exe doesn't. No, the exe needs that there, right? So you'd either want to embed that in or have a check to go out to the internet, put that script in a repository that it can get to and install that script module, I should say. And so it can install that script module. So just to demonstrate, if I move this to my desktop and give it a run, it's going to complain that the module is not there, and you see that it didn't actually assess the amount of junk that was there. So it can cause issues. It's always something to think about when you're converting scripts to exe files. So that's about it for this lesson. We're going to go ahead and move on to the next one. Hello and welcome back, fellow PowerShell engineers. We are now moving on to discuss using artificial intelligence to generate code. And of course, with that, we are going to be talking about ChatGPT. And ChatGPT is an AI bot that from OpenAI that allows you to ask it a question to do anything or give it a command, and it will try to give its best response to you, right? So how do I make an HTTP request in JavaScript? It's got some examples here. Got any creative ideas for a 10-year-old's birthday? Explain quantum computing in simple terms. You could have it write a paper. You can have it generate code, of course, which is what we're going to do with it. Let's just give an example of what. Let's just ask it, what is ChatGPT and how can it benefit the writing of PowerShell scripts? And it's giving us an example here. So ChatGPT is a language model developed by OpenAI that is trained to generate human-like responses to text prompts. It is a language model that has a deep understanding of the English language, which allows it to provide highly accurate and relevant responses to a wide range of queries. What a better answer than what I said when I opened up this lesson with. So in terms of how ChatGPT can benefit the writing of PowerShell scripts, it can provide a number of advantages. For example, providing syntax help can assist in identifying the correct syntax for specific commands or functions, offering guidance on best practices, providing sample code, which is great, and assisting with troubleshooting. Overall, ChatGPT can improve the efficiency and accuracy of PowerShell script writing by providing guidance and assistance through the development process. What a great, great answer to that. And while I've got to throw this out, while some people were quick to sound the demise of modern software and systems engineers, many others have been much more optimistic. You could certainly put me in that camp. I mean, I'm more of an optimist in general anyway. So I saw somebody on Twitter put this really great quote. A lot of people have said this, I'm sure by now, but you aren't going to get replaced by AI. You're going to be replaced by a person who is using AI. And I can't express how much I agree with that. You know, using ChatGPT has massive, massive, massive potential to augment existing PowerShell script development. And let's go ahead and just have it write a script so you can see what it can do. So let's say write a PowerShell script that moves all users from one Active Directory organizational unit to another. Oops. And just that quick, it's writing PowerShell script to move users from one OU to another in Active Directory. Very, very cool. Let's zoom in a little bit. And you can literally just copy the code. Now, one thing, and this is still doing this is funny, even since writing my PowerShell book, PowerShell for Systems Engineers, available on Amazon, uh, it's still not identifying PowerShell. I feel like early on it did, and maybe by the time you've taken this course, it doesn't, or it's fixed this, but it always picks it up as a different programming language. And maybe somewhere someone said, "Hey, PowerShell is a console, not a programming language." I don't know. It does always seem to pick it up as Perl, PHP. I've seen it even in my book. Actually, I did a similar example to this in my book, and I did it as Bash. And all of those things kind of make sense because PowerShell is really unique in that it is a programming language and a command line console. But yeah, so I mean, put together a piece of code here pretty quickly. So throughout the course, for the remaining units, we're going to be using this will be one of the options for automate, or well, no, actually, our focus on AI will use this in every chapter. We'll have it try to generate something related to the topic of that chapter, just to get our minds working on how it works. And yeah, I mean, it's just very, very cool. But there is one thing I have to also bring up with it, and it is that it's not always super accurate. I would say probably more than half the time it is, depending on what you're trying to do. But the way it works is that it's generating, it's scanning, it seems to be scanning what it finds out on the web, right? So if someone has a custom function, it might say that, hey, it might not point out that it's a custom function, just put it in here. So it seems like it's kind of making up functions or commandlets or modules. But it also is prone to coding errors. And I've got an example of this, and there's an example of this in the book as well. And it's a script that I had it make right here to, I believe this was to audit domain admins in a particular group. Yeah, that's right. That's what it is. And this is great, but there is an error here. I mean, if you were to run this, and I'm not on a server right now, so I'm not going to, and it's that it's using this group variable right here. So it's using this to define like the target group that we're auditing. But then down here in the for each, it's using it again as sort of the placeholder variable for looping through the groups that it's finding. So that it's finding that a particular user is in. So it's even crazy enough too, like on this evaluation statement, it's saying group.name for each element that it's looping through is equal to group. But this is the same variable. Like this can't, this won't actually work. So basically I remember generating this and running it. I'm like, what the heck? This isn't working. You know, this looks good. You look at this, it looks good. And it doesn't even throw an error either because syntactically this is all correct, but it just doesn't work. So, you know, the fix to it is just to change this to admin group. I mean, this is a fix. Change this to admin group. Now we've got a different name, and then it's also saying, hey, it's a member of the group down here on this right host statement. So we'd say, hey, this is also admin group. So yeah, so that, I mean, that fixes it, but it's this kind of stuff where it's like, hey, this looks good, but you know, you might wind up using it sometimes and spend time troubleshooting it, you know, even though this was generated in seconds. Yeah, so it's just something to be aware of. Definitely in a production environment too. You would never ever want to just make code with ChatGPT and just run it. I mean, that's crazy. Like you can use it, and funnily enough, ChatGPT says, "Hey, assisting, providing sample code." You know, it's not saying it's providing production code. Hey, this is good to go. You know, you work at a bank, go run this, see if it works. You know, I would not trust it. Definitely have your test environment set up and be skeptical of what it gives you. That said, amazing tool. It's very cool. You know, just in explaining concepts, you know, you could have it explain anything you want to. So with that said, we'll be using this a lot, and let's go ahead and move on to the next lesson.